as Jeff's indicated, we've had a bit of a move off that very interesting situation down on the 21st of July. So it's moved up from 1680, and that was a fairly dramatic bullish engulfing candle we had there. And the day after gave me a perfect technical ring low setup for a long on the daily. Friday's price action, as Jeff's also mentioned about strong non-farm payrolls, which came in at 528,000. Because they were so strong, and that was more than double that was expected initially from the forecast of 250,000 up from 398,000 the month before. So really, really strong employment figures happening there. There's a decrease in the unemployment rate for the US, and these really ridiculously strong non-farm payroll numbers, which saw, obviously, with the US dollar increasing, we saw gold come back and close at 1774. So where does that go? On the higher timeframes, we'll go to the charts in just a tick, but I'm starting to get really excited here because now we have got some very visible technical setups on the weekly and the monthly charts. It's got to get our attention now. It's really, we've been very, very patient, kids. I would have to say we've been really patient. And I think we've finally seen a reversal of the downward decline of gold from the 8th of March highs. So let's just go to the charts and have a look at what we were talking about. Just to backtrack, non-farm payrolls, let's look at that. That was a massive move and to be expected with those kind of numbers. You're not going to get around those at all. That's what the big move that we had done. But just have a little look at the bounce. It did come down and hit the 200 simple moving average, which is my green line. But we had a bounce, and we'll go through that a little bit more, but you can see how strongly we have moved up from the 21st of July over here. And that has just been a continual, we've moved up, gone sideways, we've moved up, completely supported by the weekly pivot there. And obviously it's gone through the 100, which is the gold line. Guess what? Loves the levels. And it's just ticked its way back up. There's been a bit of news as we've gone along the way. It's come back, retested levels. Didn't break those lows, by the way, didn't break those lows. But now we're at this interesting critical level, as Jeff pointed out, the downward trend. Now, I'm not a big trend line person, but we are talking at serious levels at that stage. Now, just to go zoom in, I've highlighted that ring low. We've had a downtrend. We have had a bounce off that was the S3 level, S3 monthly level. Okay, so it's a really strong level of support. Reversal bar there, a high test, and then we've had a close above the high, which gives me a ringed low. And that is, for me, that's a buy signal. Okay, that's bullish. That's where we go. Now, couple that with my daily upturn on the MACD histogram, and it's starting to look pretty good, isn't it? Seasonally, August is a good month. It was meant to start in July, but with all the hooey, remember, seasonal indicators are a bias. They're not an entry indicator. They are just a bias. If it's going to be a little bit late, it might be a little bit late. It does what it wants to do. But we do have a bias at this time of the year for gold to actually start to increase. That's what the daily chart's looking at. Now, we didn't take out the low of Thursday's bar, regardless of the fact that we had a pretty strong retracement with those figures. Now, the other thing, look at the weekly. This is the weekly chart. Again, another ringed low on the weekly chart. Criteria for a ring low to trade to the top side is a downtrend, reversed by a low test bar, followed by, on the shoulder, a bar that closes above the high of the low test bar, which is what we've got. We've got that perfect technical setup. Again, bouncing off S3 on the monthly support. We have a technical setup here. Looking good. And let's just have another little look on the monthly. I'm getting excited here because I've been very, very patient here, Jeff. You'd have to agree. low test bar in this consolidation box. We have not broken this level of old resistance, becomes new support. Bang, bang, bang. Quite a few attempts, not far off the 50 EMA on the monthly, so we're not too far off that. But what an interesting scenario we've got setting up here on the monthly. Still need this with the monthly and the indicators. Still, it's a bit like the turning the Queen Mary around. It takes a little bit of time to get some movement happening and some action happening, but I think we can safely say that the DMI minus is well below the 25 level. Not looking flash. All this has just got to come up a little bit more. So where are we at? Let's do a quick fundamental analysis. I think what has also happened, I've heard a couple of commentators during the week say this, if gold's finally popped up on the radar, it's now considered a bit of a good buy. It went down to 16, I think it was just below 1670 on some charts, on 1680 around for me. And it's finally, perhaps, somewhat, fingers crossed, now proving to be a stable, if not reliable, safe haven. Everything is just going upside down. Have a look at Bitcoin, shall we? Or don't, it might be too painful. So don't look at Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's all over the shop. We've got volatility happening. We've got central banks raising interest rates. We're talking about recessions looming. And Fed Pal actually made a very valid statement the other day about it's not a recession yet. You can't have a recession when you've got high employment rates. Very good point. August is seasonally bullish period. The real bond yields, by the way, if anybody's had a little bit of notice in doing research into their gold, they've been falling for the last couple of weeks as well, which is not out of the ordinary, with the US dollar coming down, as Jeff showed you, the US dollar index, and the real bond yields have actually been falling as well. So, and that's not to be unexpected, especially with inflation rates quite high. So that's really going to knock your real bond yields off its little chair. So yields down, gold's up. That's what we look for. We look for that inverse relationship. US dollar index, yes, we have just covered that. But after the stronger NFP, we did have a bit of a rally, so you could expect a bit of a pullback. So there's no surprise that we're going to see. I think gold, it did turn lower on Friday. However, it was a very interesting indicator. And if we just go to the outlook for the week, so we've done the review outlook, where I expect to see gold, and Jeff has also mentioned that it'll be a bit of processing on Monday until the bigger markets open, London and New York, to see how that has been processed. All that information needs to be processed and put through the system a bit. So the other interesting thing to note, and I will just pop back to the 4-hourly chart, that move after NFPs from the swing high, so we've got our swing high there, to the swing low, and where it came back up to, that was a 50% retracement. And why that makes it interesting is because to see a 50% fib bounce, it wasn't a shallow bounce, it was a full 50% bounce. To me, that would indicate that the continuation of that downtrend is not likely. Okay, so if it was only a shallow retracement back to say 38.2, then you could perhaps say, well, it was only a shallow retracement, therefore we could expect another leg down. So at the moment, I want to see how it consolidates, how it plays out on Monday, and just to see where that goes as in relation to that 50% fib bounce. As real bond rate yields, it's really tricky to say that really quickly, by the way. It's really hard. But the real bond rate yields will continue to fall as inflation increases. And as we pointed out, we've got that figure coming up on Tuesday, I think Jeff said. It was Tuesday, the CPI. See where that's at. I don't think it's going to be anything exciting. I think it's just going to make the situation worse with the inflation. And obviously that's going to impact the real bond rates as well. So as we see that fall and the US dollar perhaps fall as a result of those inflation figures, we should see gold take another step up. So fingers crossed. I think we've finally been waiting long enough, and I think we're on a bit of a winner here, but just don't jump into it first thing on Monday. Let's just see how it all pans out.
You know, you don't, sorry, you don't need a chart, folks listening and watching. You don't need a chart for gold. You just got to listen to Ainslie's voice. And
she's getting excited instead of, here we go again, boring as batshit. Oh, oops. Yep. You know what I mean. Sorry.
It's actually a very good fertilizer, so I'm okay with it.
I'm starting to get excited, guys. Gold's finally starting to do something, and we've finally, like I said, we'd had a bit of a 8th of March. We're in August, and we're finally starting to see a confirmation on the monthly and the weekly and the daily on those ring lows, bouncing off really strong levels of support on all those levels. It's nice to see. It's nice to see that we're starting to get a bit of feedback. Now, what I just wanted to make sure is that I just don't want to see this being just the 3 bars up and it's 3 black crows on a continued downhill. But that's why we've got to wait for that information. But the 50% bounce was very interesting to see on that 4-hourly chart on the fib. If it was a really strong fallout, technically, it wouldn't have bounced as high as 50%. That's what's meant to happen. So let's see what happens on Monday when the market opens. But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a continued step up with a few things. The planets are starting to line up, Jeff. Hooray.
All good. The Queen Mary is just about halfway around. By the sound of it.
We'll get that excited, but we've got a low test bar on the monthly. So the Queen Mary is getting its act together. Indeed.
It's a good sign. All right.
Yes,
we'll be back with you very, very shortly, of course, to talk about that black stuff that flows.
Yes,
has been
indeed.
flowing downhill a little bit. And I've noticed that at the pumps, which is kind of good. September prices come. What's that called? That thing? The rebate the government's been, or the discount the government's been giving us on petrol. Can't remember what it's called.
They've rolled back the excise.
That's the one. Excise. Exciting excise.